Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here. We have others who are going to be joining us who may come in as we begin our conversation. We don't have much time, so we're going to move right along. We always like to start by acknowledging the the pain that there is in the world with the economic system that we have now. We like to say it, an economy of our own, that it's waged as war. And there certainly is evidence of that kind of trauma going on all around the world right now. So we'll acknowledge that. But let's do an icebreaker. And let me ask you, how many of you who are here, if you look at the bottom of your screen there's a place where it says reactions, and you can raise your hand. And so I'd love for you to, if you can, raise your hand if you've ever felt anxious about your money. Anybody? Oh, yeah, I see a few of those. Huh, yeah. And how, those of you who feel you can, how often do you feel anxious about money? Do you feel it every day, or on a couple of occasions, or the closer it gets to payday, or yeah, yeah, it's pretty widespread. And in fact, when you look at the system, sometimes I think it's designed to be this way, but that's what we're here to talk about. Before we start, Carmen, would you show our first slide? We like to make sure that we're all on the same page with our assumptions. Okay, it's coming. Yeah, okay. The assumptions that we're building on are that money still talks in a male voice. Our financial systems and rules and tools, we've inherited those. They weren't invented by most of us. And they generally omit, misname, and discount females. Slavery ended 150 plus years ago, but systemic racial and indigenous exploitation remains. And women have always worked, but only in the past 50 years have the majority of women and young mothers particularly entered the modern job market. We were blocked for a long time. People of color, fluid genders, and people with wombs are now business owners and financial managers, yet their caring and yours remains discounted in this economic system. Economics, from the Greek word oikonomia, literally means household management. Women's know-how can change an economy waged as war to one waging life. Growing inequality, environmental ruin, and war's wreckage of planet and people tells us we cannot afford more alpha male only business as usual. Next slide. Our intention is to grow your economic confidence in your life-waging value. Your identity is shaped and strengthened by discovery of your own economic story. We honor ways of thinking and learning that tend to seek out and find connections, all 5 stages in Women's Ways of Knowing, a book that's been important to us. The first stage is silence. If you don't know a subject, you might feel quiet and seen but not heard, maybe dumb and disconnected. That's okay. It's normal to feel that way when you're beginning. From there, you move on to receive knowledge. You listen to voices of others in authority. And tonight we've gathered some great people who know a great deal, and we're going to engage with those voices. After that, you may listen to your own inner voice, a subjective voice, and you might feel protective about it and a little fearful, maybe a little angry. That's okay also. You'll move on to procedural knowledge, which we can respect all different ways of knowing, interested not just in what people think, but how their perspectives were formed, which we're going to be talking about tonight too. And you can begin to ask questions and find some truths more reliable and logical than others. And finally, there's constructed knowledge. We can see that all knowledge is built, not born, and we can review and revise our ideas and collaborate with others, expressing our thoughts and our questions. So let's begin with that under the under our belt here. Whoops, not yet. Okay. All right. So we've set an example of imperfection here, and let's continue with that. I want to tell you that we've got this amazing group. That's probably why you're here, because you read about this amazing group that we've gathered together. And I'm going to ask each panelist to briefly introduce herself by sharing how she personally came to this subject of the trauma of money, and demonstrate how economics is personal. I'm going to start with the great Riane Eisler, our honored guest, who is the author of several books that have influenced us: The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, The Real Wealth of Nations, Creating a Caring Economics, and most recently with co-author Douglas Fry, you published Nurturing Our Humanity, How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains and Future. So much that you've written addresses damage from violence and dominance, lives affecting and the way that this affects our brains as well as our policies. In what way did your interest in these subjects bring you to this topic of money trauma?
Well, thank you, Ricky. And I'm so glad you're doing this webinar. I have a great deal of passion for this work of cultural and with it personal transformation. And that passion is deeply rooted in my own early childhood, when I was a child refugee with my parents from the Holocaust. And those experiences, witnessing violence on Crystal Night, my father was dragged away by a bunch of Nazis. But I also saw something else, which has also affected my life tremendously, what I today call spiritual courage. I saw my mother stand up to the Nazis because she recognized one of them as an Austrian, a Nazi, a former errand boy of the family business, and she got furious. I want him back. How dare you do this to this man who has been so kind to you? Well, she could have been killed. Many Jewish people were killed that night, but by a miracle she wasn't. We escaped to Cuba, where I grew up. And that was also traumatic because of I grew up in the industrial slums of Havana. This tremendous, it was in the pre-Castro days, a tremendous difference between those on top and those on bottom. And, but then I lived, obviously the questions that this led to was, does it have to be this way? When we humans, as I saw in my mother, have such an enormous capacity for consciousness, for caring, for creativity, because she was creative. I mean, some money passed hands eventually, etc. Why has there been so much cruelty, so much insensitivity, so much violence? And these are the questions that eventually led to my books. I mean, there were other questions. I was a very curious child. And, you know, in the Bible, because my parents hired a rabbi to teach me I'm Jewish because I raised my hand in chapel. They sent me to a private Methodist school. You can find out much more about me actually in a Scientific American article, an interview with me that just appeared. But so they hired a rabbi to teach me as if I didn't know that I'm Jewish. And I wanted to know, in the Bible, it says that women will henceforth be subservient to men. And I always wanted to know, well, what was it like before the henceforth, right? And nobody wanted to talk about it. Well, years and years later, when I did the research for The Chalice and the Blade, which was the first book reporting my multidisciplinary cross-cultural findings, looking at the whole of humanity, yes, both its female and its male halves and everybody in between, at the whole of history, including the millennia of our prehistory. And yeah, it was different then, and women were not subordinate. And then also, of course, looking at the whole of our lives, where we all live in our intimate and other and family and other, you know, close relations. I came up with a completely new model of society, which I've called the partnership model and the domination model. And it's really a partnership domination scale. But I then went on to other books. And one of them you mentioned is my book on economics, The Real Wealth of Nations. And the subtitle, and this was a time when just putting caring and economics in the same sentence was a heresy. When it first came out, people just said, what? Well, the subtitle is Creating a Caring Economics, okay? And what this really shows is that, yes, there's a lot we can do once we're informed, once we know that we've been really, I mean, the work of care, which is labeled feminine, right, was supposed to be done for free by a woman in a male-controlled household by both Smith and Marx, okay? Because they came out of more rigid domination times. So both socialism and capitalism really perpetuated what I call a gendered system of values. So we've got to change the system. And that's what my work is all about. And you can't change it by using the conventional categories of right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, because they fragment our consciousness. And yes, gender is a huge category. And all of these conventional categories, you know, that they marginalize nothing less than the majority of humanity, women and children, which is crazy. So we've got to stand reality right side up, because right now it's all completely a mess. So that's my story.
Thank you, Rianne. Andrea, will you, Andrea Barrett is a co-founder of the Banker Ladies Council, was in that film that has been widely circulated. We're so delighted that you could join us from Canada, from Toronto, where you are doing all kinds of things. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Andrea, and tell us what you think is important for our audience to know about you and how you came to this topic of money trauma.
Thank you, Ricky. Hello, everybody. Very happy to be joining you. I totally resonate with an economy of our own. Just saying it makes me feel good. An economy of our own. As Ricky mentioned, I am coming to you from Canada. My name is Andrea Barrett, and I'm the director of the Rosca Network. We are a group that was formed where we call ourselves the Banker Ladies Council. And we owe all of the work that we are doing to a wonderful, fantastic, brilliant professor who goes by the name of Dr. Caroline Shanaz Hussein. She is an author. Yes. She's wonderful. We adore her. This is one of her books. And in this book, one of the chapters, which you talk about financial trauma, there's a chapter in this book called Using Money Pools to Combat Social and Business Exclusion. So my parents are immigrants to Canada. They came from Jamaica. So the way the way they earned money and the relationship with money was different back home than it is when they immigrated to this country. The way I came about this working in Rosca's, and for those of you who don't know, a Rosca, ROSCA, is a rotating and savings credit association. So it's where you have a group of people who pool their money together as a group, and everyone takes turns accessing the pot or accessing the money. So it's collaborative, it's cooperative, it's mutual aid, and it is how we as predominantly women take care of an economy of our own. So this is how I came by the work, through being introduced to this study through Dr. Caroline Hussein, something that our families in different cultures have practiced for years. We just thought it was, you know, a small thing that you do in the privacy of your own home with your culture. It is actually something that academics are studying because the people, predominantly women, who participate in Roscas, the banker ladies, contribute significantly to the economy. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's exciting to hear about. All right. So we've got Professor Jacqueline Strenio with us from Norwich University. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself? We know you do research in health and domestic violence and possibly other subjects that I'm not up on, but would you tell us what began you on your journey to investigating this phenomenon of money trauma?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ricky. And hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be part of this conversation, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you all tonight as well. So, as a woman studying in the men-dominated discipline of economics in graduate school, I became really interested in like the gender differences and how we experience and engage in the economy, which is an economy of our own, everything Ricky's highlighted for us already. And some of the ways that our gender identities can influence our financial well-being in later life. And in particular, I was really interested in something that wasn't getting a lot of discussion in economics, at least, that is violence against women, and how violence can result in really significant harms, like beyond the direct adverse mental and physical health effects that come to mind maybe first. So many of us might know either personally or anecdotally, or at least we can imagine some of the ways that violence, like workplace sexual harassment to physical intimate partner violence, some of the ways that could derail like our educational or occupational trajectories. But I wanted to get some hard data on the relationship to encourage policymakers to care, to direct resources, and allocate money to prevention and intervention strategies. And so the economic costs and consequences of violence against women has become one of my main research areas. So I think my interest in money trauma really comes from this research on violence against women, thinking about the multidimensional, like long-term impacts that experiencing violence can have, not only physically, mentally, or emotionally, but how that can really spill over into our financial lives and well-being.
Yes, excellent. I'm glad you're doing that research. You'll tell us more about that as we go on with our conversation. But I want to get on to our last guest, Shonda Williams, who is an organizer here in Vermont and actually has a conference coming up at Goddard College here on October 20th. Also, you can get tickets through Eventbrite and look online for that. Shonda, you and I are practically neighbors, but there's a lot I don't know about you, and you can ask me questions too later. But would you be kind enough to introduce us to the work that you're doing with the BIPOC community there in Vermont, and what you might see of trauma with money in your own experience or in that of the people you're working with.
Mhm. Well, thank you for having me here, Ricky, and hello, everybody. So, my story begins when I was growing up in the religious sector. And so I won't point out any religious sect, but, growing up in the Black church, you see a lot of people who are poor and not really able to manage their resources, but are told consistently to give more than what they can give to their local church, because the local church, even though it is a house of worship, it's like family. But I felt that I saw a lot of people going above and beyond their means, and pretty much being guilted into doing that. So growing up, it made me very resentful for the religious institutions. And then later on in my life, I began working in the insurance and banking industry and just noticed a lot of disparities for Black and Brown people working in those industries, not having all of the tools in order to get ahead. And then when it came to the pandemic, uh, people were living paycheck to paycheck. And it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I've got to do something. Thinking, oh my goodness, home ownership is possible for a lot of people. And especially in Black and Brown communities, there's no structured help with financing. People kind of like have to jump through hoops in order to get what they need in order to navigate the home ownership system. So I decided to take that knowledge and bring it to the BIPOC community. So my titles are BIPOC community advocate, equity strategist, and reparations activist. So my series is the Money Matters series. So this Friday, I'll be talking about ecofeminism and radical love and how women can come together and build those bridges and heal those gaps, not just for Black and Brown women, but for women everywhere, and just getting into the knowledge of public banking. That's also just so vital for us to take back those tax dollars from Wall Street and put it into the public good. So I'm on many different platforms, trying to do the work, educating people and bringing people together to turn things around and make our economy whole again. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want the audience here to feel free to ask questions in addition to the ones that I'll be posing. You can do that by putting it in the chat. And after our conversation, Carmen will help us direct those questions to the panelists, so you'll have a chance to get your questions answered. But in the meantime, I see most of you are being kind enough to mute your mic. That just makes it a little easier to make sure that everyone can hear all right. There are a number of questions that you have posed to us already, but and I'm speaking to the audience now, but the trauma that you see do you think it's most often a personal event, like a domestic violence situation, or a business going bankrupt, or a flood? We just had a big flood here in there are lots of natural disasters that can wreck people's financial lives, as well as because their personal lives are wrecked. Do you think it's more often that kind of an event, or do you think it is more systemic? Do you see systemic reasons for that traumatic effect? Anyone?
I can
Oh,
start.
okay, Andrea.
Okay, so two things come to mind. I think it's a combination of the two. There are systemic issues as well as crisis. So it's like it's either chronic or it's acute. When I think of something that could be acute, if you have a medical emergency, if you have a death in the family, if you, like you said, have a flood or something happens and you don't have insurance. Our last our last speaker or panelist mentioned that when it comes to financial literacy, sometimes rates of insurance are low in our community. Why? Why aren't we all as insured as everyone else? Is it because of financial literacy, or is it because we don't see the importance of that? When you have a crisis, a death in the family, or for whatever reason you need money and you're alone, then that is traumatic. One of the tools, and I'm so grateful for the concept of Rosca and pooling your funds, is that you're not alone. You are in a group with other people, either you speak the same language, same culture, same values, or just people you know and trust that you can lean on and get the support, the financial support that you need. When it comes to other areas, precarious work, my mom is a retired PSW. And when you look at the healthcare industry, and someone mentioned during the pandemic, the care economy and the people that were first line responders were usually people of color. Who was working at the grocery store? Who was the PSW? Who were the ones that had to continue to go to work because they couldn't work remotely? And unfortunately, they have lower rates of pay. So I think it's twofold. It is systemic, and it is it can be seen as being acute if you lose your home, if there's a death in the family and you're not insured. So I think it's twofold.
Great answer. Great answer. Yes, I see that too. Yes,
I'm going to chime in for a moment. I see that there are things that we can do, but it's a balancing act between surviving and trying to thrive in the present system, which, as Stuart Pittman points out, insurance really doesn't cover everything. Try getting your care covered or even a home damage claim. And they make lots of money off people. And also the system is, as you said, Ricky, in your introduction, it is rigged against the majority. I mean, we're talking about domination economics, whether it was a Chinese emperor or an Arab sheikh or a Hindu Raja, or so-called trickle-down economics, neoliberalism. It's the same thing. The people at the bottom are supposed to content themselves with the scraps falling from the opulent tables of those on top. And we scramble here and there. So it's a balancing act between trying to transform the system and trying to survive in it. But if we're to do more than survive, if we are to thrive, we've got to have a system and metrics, measurements that focus on investing in caring for people starting at birth and caring for our natural life-sustaining systems. And that's really what the real wealth of nations is about. And it's very accessible, and I really urge you to read it because it's still so incredibly relevant. And as you know, Ricky.
Yes, I do know, and I'm thinking right now about the policy choices that have been made recently. We know from COVID that we can cut our child poverty rates. We did that with the child
Yes,
tax credit.
absolutely.
And at the end of September, we cut payments that were being made during COVID to 220,000 childcare services. And what are families going to do without affordable childcare? It's just a crazy economic non-solution. It's just nutty.
It's in-group versus out-group, and that's what the domination system is all about.
Yes.
You know? And we can't live that way anymore. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But we
uh,
still need to survive. And Shonda, I want to visit the question about the symptoms of financial trauma. We're told that there are 4 common symptoms: the avoidance of money, the hypervigilant hypervigilant frugality, or not wanting to spend any money,
Mhm.
and then self-sabotage with obsessive negative thoughts and other kinds of symptoms. Can can you address some of those, or do you address those with your series?
Absolutely. So, a lot of these symptoms are a PTSD, okay? And
Mm,
it's financial induced stress. So, when you have avoidance and denial, you get people who they shove the bills in the drawer and try to forget about it as if it's going to disappear, and it doesn't. You just get another bill, okay? Avoiding creditor calls. So I work with people on, what are some of the solutions that they can use to alleviate stress, and maybe how to talk to a bill collector or to respond in writing to any bills that are overdue, and how to
mhm,
really take ownership and accountability. So, and I always encourage people to seek financial counseling and just dispel the myths and the shame and the stigma about money and money problems. The more you talk about it, the more you dispel the shame,
mm,
and it alleviates the stress. And you
mhm,
talk about that with someone that you trust. And I always encourage people really have like maybe an accountability buddy, someone who you really admire, that is accountable, responsible, and someone who can help you without shame or blame remain accountable for your finances. And then there's other tips that you can do, such as the cash method. Just if you're going to spend down, maybe using all cash, putting those plastic cards aside and using a cash method. Because I think some people get so used to using plastic, they feel almost as if the money's never going to run out. And if you can't manage your fiscal day to day, you should not be using plastic. So I really encourage people that, paying interest on credit cards for money that you certainly cannot afford is an additional stressor that you definitely don't need.
mm.
So encouraging people to use cash, the cash method, I think is definitely a good way to have people heal themselves. So
That's
healing
interesting.
trauma.
So being able to have something tangible with a
Yeah,
card, it's so easy. It's just kind of a mental click, click, snap, snap, and it's done.
absolutely.
Maybe we need to rename those credit cards debt cards, because
Yes,
that, as soon as you use them, right? Maybe we shouldn't call them
absolutely.
credit cards.
Hmm.
Uh, Andrea, I saw you nodding your head at some of the comments that Shonda was making. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Oh,
That
I
you've
just was
seen?
agreeing with her, especially when she talked about having an accountability partner. That's how I see the people who participate in a Rosca. So,
Ah,
depending on where you come from in the world, you call it something different. It could be called a susu or a pardna or a box hand. You have accountability partners. You have committed to a group of 10, 20, 30 other people that you will show up every week or every month or on some predetermined rhythm to contribute some money. And there is no shame. It is whatever the agreed upon rules are. Some Roscas are $10, $20, some as high as $1,000. But you have accountability partners. You are committed to showing up on a regular cycle to contribute that money. So you have people who are looking out for you and cheering you on because you all have the same goal. At the end, you're collecting a pot of money that, like our last speaker said, if you have debt, if you were able to use this money to pay down some debt, use this money to reduce any interest you owe, use this money to uplift yourself. And as a result, everyone in the group is being uplifted. So I'm resonating to what she's saying, especially about having an accountability partners. Rosca's is a built-in accountability group.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jackie, I know that you were interested in talking about a project that you were working on that was related to money trauma, where you see women leading the way in a project. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I could talk about that. And also maybe first just quickly contribute, like I so appreciate Andrea and Shonda's positive spin. And I think my research, like I miss hearing about the accountability buddies and partnerships, because I look at some of the ways intimate relationships or partnerships can also be restrictive. So I'm thinking about a particular form of intimate partner violence, like economic abuse, which tends to be one of the forms that's under-researched, at least in the academic sector in economics, which really centers on creating economic dependency on the perpetrator, limiting their ability to acquire, use, or maintain resources. And so I'm thinking, just all these comments, thinking about the role of credit cards, and, seeing evidence in which credit cards are used to continue to perpetrate violence, because perpetrators can track mobility if it's linked to an Uber account, or limit purchases. So maybe having cash in a lot of ways is like a freedom in some forms. Yeah, so I think my work is, I'm so inspired by folks on the ground, actually enacting changes, because a lot of what I do is just articulating all of the downsides and trying to really make sure that it's the data can show this, to garner resources to support different programs, and send money that way. So those are some of the projects I do, but this is what I want. This is my challenge, is how to operationalize it, and actually enact the changes that we want to see. So it's been great hearing about them.
A quick question to Ricky.
Yes.
We've been getting some really interesting comments from the folks who are attending, and I just wanted to know at what point can I read some of those so their points of view get shared.
Are they comments or are they questions?
No, they're comments. They're interesting comments.
Oh, well, if you go, why don't you share them now? Or
is that okay with everyone? Oh, okay. So Juliette Kego, when Rianne mentioned domination economics, she's defined it as the system that is rigged against the majority. The people at the bottom are constantly doing a balancing act of trying to survive and trying to strive. Stuart Pittman talks about the utility function of, quote, insurance, and many things are destroyed by the profit motive. How many doctors have done things for you or your loved ones, not as necessary, but to create a billable event for their bottom line or their quota? He also says claims personnel get bonuses for denying claims. My friends in the UK and Europe are confused when I talk about this. Joe Polito says, good to hear a spirit related to FDR proposal for a second Bill of Rights. He has a link in that comment to Wikipedia. Connie Tollison says, we might also consider that the tech system has been attempting to answer the wrong questions since 1946. What is the human use of human beings in a technological society? The proper question is, what is the human use of technology in human society? Thanks a lot, Shonda, from Juliet again, Jackie and Andrea, great insights. And I guess she had to leave. Stuart Pittman says the financialization of the economy, the real trickle down of the monetary system that sets all money as a loan or debt owed the central banks, and the priority of fiscal and monetary policy to give money to the wealthy and other bankers to invest and not spent on the common welfare as priorities of debt-free money by the Treasury is the real neoliberal trick that has been around not decades but centuries. There are other wonderful comments there about other issues.
And people can see these in the chat document, right?
Yes.
You wanted to bring them to our attention. Well, thank you. Thanks. Well, it sounds like many people are on a similar vibe and think that maybe the system is a little bit rigged so that we all are kind of traumatized, or the 99% of us are traumatized. Rianne, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, because Jackie's talked about intimate partnerships. And unfortunately, I coined the term partnership versus domination at a time before partnership meant an intimate partnership or a working together or whatever. I, as an attorney, because my background is also as an attorney, it's because in a partnership, at least in theory, in a business partnership, there's mutual accountability, mutual respect, and mutual benefit. That is the partnership model. But what distinguishes it is that it pays particular attention to gender and to childhood. And my last book, Nurturing Our Humanity, talks about how domination systems are trauma factories. Let's just think about that for a moment. It starts in families that are oriented very much to the domination system. I mean, consider that Putin, he decreased the penalty for intimate violence in Russia, so that if you hurt or kill a member of a family, the penalty is less than if you hurt a child or a woman or a man. It's less than if you hurt or kill a stranger, because he gets the connection. We've got to start connecting the dots between what happens in families and what happens in society at large. He gets the connection between an authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, authoritarian, highly punitive, trauma-causing family and that kind of a state. We've got to get that connection if we're going to transform the system, because otherwise we will always be on the margins, because we need to change the rules of the game. So that's really my contribution here, that yes, we need to, what Andrea, and I have a daughter called Andrea, so I'm calling you by her name. What she describes is a wonderful system, and it is a partnership system, actually, but it's on the margin someplace, So if we are not, and there are trends for changing the rules of the game, including all of the conversation about domestic violence. It used to be walk the perpetrator around the block, and now we are taking it seriously. And why are these women dependent on these guys that it's crazy, isn't it? It's built into the economic system, and we have to change it. And why are Black people or people of a different sexual orientation the out group? That's the domination system. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't want people to have the wrong idea. And if you want the configuration, go to Media Kit on our website, and it's all there in wonderful graphics.
It's there in our chat too. Shonda, you have something to add.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Rianne. I also teach a course called My Grandmother's Hands: How to Heal Racialized Trauma.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we talk about is it's part of the system of oppression. Okay, there
Mhm.
are different models of oppression because ever since the eradication, supposedly, and I'll put air quotes on that, the eradication of slavery, which is, you know, the free labor, there
Mm.
are now new models of slavery,
Mm.
the corporate model of slavery, right? And with the current laws here in the US that have taken away affirmative action,
Yeah.
which was just recently enacted, um, it's kind of created uh, it. Yeah, it's kind of created that it's okay, that oppression is okay,
Yeah.
and we're gonna just, you know, keep going backwards rather than forwards.
Mhm.
So there are new models of slavery and oppression that affect marginalized communities. And so thanks for touching on that, Rianne.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we have to understand that partnership economics is designed to replace domination economics, whether it's capitalist or socialist. They all perpetuate, first of all, the devaluation of caring, and hence women or anybody else who does care work. And that is built into the system. But it also, look, I mean, it misdistributes resources. Uh, how can you be so cruel to people? You know, how can you kill people that you've never met? That is caused by trauma. And it affects both the people on top. In fact, denial. And I really highly recommend Nurturing Our Humanity here, because it draws from neuroscience tremendously. But I mean, we know whether it's slavery denial, I mean, you have to laugh. You know, slavery is beneficial. Did you know that? I mean, it's insane. Or whether it's COVID-19 denial, or whether it's the denial that we're hurting people,
Hmm.
that they're not human, you know. I mean, it is a system that leads to denial. And
Hmm.
the good news is how many people are waking up and saying, no, we have to change the system. And it can be changed. And if you listen to the interview, not only of Ricky, but of the Congressman Ron Kim in New York, there are trends, even in policies, that are moving from domination to partnership.
Which may be part of the reason why we're seeing such resistance, that you know, that pushback is represents a denial of a real fear. You know, people are scared, and I think that's where cruelty often comes from. But getting back to what kind of impacts you hope to do with your work. What impact have you seen in your work? What changes have you seen
Well, I've seen
in the work
lots of
that you do?
changes. Even
Yeah.
some of Biden's policies are going in a partnership direction. But I mean that the aid to families with children, I mean, that is so fundamental. We need a family economic bill of rights, and there is one on our website.
Hmm.
I mean, there are lots of trends, and I would say that the trend towards gender equity and elevating the so-called feminine at the same time as you elevate women, because women have internalized this just as much as men, you know. I mean, and we all have to a certain extent, but I know that there are thousands of people working for a better world, and that's what it's all about.
Andrea, have you seen that kind of result in the work that you've been doing?
We have actually. So we've made some impact, and it is nice and it's heartwarming. So the Banker Ladies Council, we're a group of 10. So we have been going around the city doing workshops, either in person or virtually, asking people to remember the way our grandparents used to save money, or our great grandparents used to save money, or what our parents did back home and continue to do when they arrived. So, we've been getting messages, or people have been reaching out to us saying, oh, I remember that when I was a little girl, my mom used to do this, or my mom still does this, or my family still practices this today. I didn't know this was as large of a phenomenon that it is. Like I thought just, my little Jamaican family did this. We are reminding people of this traditional cultural way of saving money and accessing credit from one another. Rianne talked about partnership. The doctor talked about gender-based violence. When I think of that, and I think that women are denied the opportunity to work or have to struggle, they need a social support system. They need a group of women who can help them. You're going to need first and last, and who knows what else. You don't need to do it alone. If you have that group, your Rosca, that can support you socially as well as financially, that, $10 at a time can help you get to where you need to be. So we are making impact. We are reminding people of the way our great grandparents saved money. And for some people, that's how their parents or they came to this country. It's by working collaboratively, working as a collective, supporting each other. The system is rigged. It's not working for us. So it is up to us to create a system that we can work with to help each other progress.
Mm. Shonda, you certainly have seen that. This is the second Money Matters conference that you've organized. What kind of successful feedback are you seeing?
That women are actually more confident and becoming more competent with their money.
Uh-huh.
And I actually had been coaching a woman who I said to her, you're going through a hard time. This was during the pandemic. And I said, why don't you just really concentrate and focus on buying a home? She said, because I don't want to be house poor. That was her immediate negative thought process. So after working with her for a while, she was actually able to become more positive about her thinking, aligning herself with more positive people. And so one of the things that I really try to speak about is the power of positive people, places, and things. If you are on that negative train, you've got to hop off of that, get onto something positive, look for those positive influencers, and just start retraining your thought processes through the power of positive affirmations. And she was able to buy a home 6 months later. So
No kidding.
yeah. And she's happy, she's doing well. And that's something that I want to give to everyone. Okay, that it is possible. Change is possible. You can teach an old dog new tricks.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So Jackie, we're going to come back to you in this economic abuse. What can women do about? Do you introduce them to there's an economic wheel of power and control? Do people in our audience know about that wheel of power and control that the domestic violence world uses? I was going to make a slide of it, and then it slipped my mind, I guess. But it identifies the many ways in which control is exerted, with the final move being physical violence. But there are lots of steps to get there, right? Can you talk about some of those so that people can recognize that if it's happening in their lives?
Sure. Yeah, I think that is a major issue. And on the positive note, it speaks to everything we just heard, is that the best intervention is financial literacy and economic empowerment, whether that happens in the community or for me, like my other role as an educator. And so trying to talk about these things in economics classes and make it more inclusive so that everyone's experiences are reflected in the discipline of economics. Like it's not just about paid market work, right? Like everything we're talking about tonight, economics is about social provisioning. So it's the work we do at home, it's the care labor and the volunteer work. And when I introduce economics in that way in my classes, like everyone's like, oh yeah, like economics is for me. It's like about me, and it recognizes my experiences. So I do think that is the solution. But yes, one of the major problems with economic abuse is that people like don't know it when it's happened. It's hard to recognize, it's hard to define, like you mentioned. So like it can there's a variety of ways we can define it. It can be like economic control. So when a perpetrator would prevent like someone from having access to or knowledge about finances or having any financial decision-making power. But it could also be employment or educational sabotage. So among college students, it could be exhibiting behaviors that prevent the woman from attending class or concentrating while at class or dropping out of school, or that could happen also in, beyond school and in employment. So it's challenging for a woman to obtain or maintain their employment. And then economic exploitation as well, like destroying a survivor's financial resources or credit. So there's a variety of forms.
Well, I think the main problem is that women's work of care is not rewarded in a way that puts food on the table and puts a roof over our heads. And unless we change that evaluation, which is essential, we're gonna have band-aids, on the system.
Shonda.
And then there's some other models that are around, like let's say, I think Belgium, the Netherlands, where mothers and fathers get paid for paternity leave. So we need to really look at some of those other models and say, hey, how are we valuing one another? Women's equal pay for equal work.
Oh, there's that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that once we really just stand up and say, maybe we're going to have a national boycott day, all women just not go to work one day. And
I love that
maybe
idea.
then we'll be taken seriously. Who knows? But those are just some of the things that we may have to think about.
And you can find some of those models, by the way, in the Real Wealth of Nations and on our websites, because they're all over. We are the only developed nation that doesn't have paid parental leave. And coincidentally, we have the highest child mortality, we have the highest child poverty, and the highest maternal mortality. I mean, these are not coincidences.
That's right. That's right. I saw that, I can't remember the source now, but I read recently, and I used it in one of the articles that I wrote, that European, other developed nations usually invest on average $14,000 in their families' welfare. And how does the United States compare to that? What would be your guess? $14,000 for the average developed country.
Well, the number varies, but the fact is that the United States invests less than half, usually,
yes,
what other developed nations do in families. And that's insane, because the work of care and early childhood education is what's going to produce that, quote, high quality capital that economists are so enamored of for the post-industrial era. And Well, we have to stand reality right side up in our policies, but it starts with our changing our consciousness that
Mhm.
women have always worked, and they've
Mhm.
worked very hard inside their families. And what we then reward is the question. It's the
Right.
question of what do
So,
we
so
reward?
that statistic of $14,000 on average for other developed countries, it's an average. United States, by comparison, is not less than half. It's $500 compared to $14,000. So it's
Wow.
huge disparity, a huge
What
disparity.
year was that statistic?
I can
Because
get it for you, and I just
yeah, because under Biden it probably went up a little.
well, it did during COVID, but
Yeah.
now it's being discontinued. Everything is reversing again, and
Well, it's
our
insane.
poverty rate is up, and yeah, so it did demonstrate. He did demonstrate that it was possible to make a difference with your policies and your
Absolutely.
yeah,
Question of priorities, not
right.
of funding.
So, what do you believes makes the biggest difference for women's money trauma? I've heard some of you say that that accountability partner, or knowing that you're not alone. It takes some courage to begin to talk about this subject, doesn't it? Because it's still a pretty taboo topic. You need to be able to trust the person that you're confiding in, right? So, what are some of the traits that you look for when you're looking for that kind of, oh, for instance, Andrea, you've got 10 people on your council.
Yes.
How did you go about discovering them, and how did that grow? It didn't begin with 10, did it?
No, it didn't. It began like a typical Rosca does, with one person. So Roscas start with a banker lady, one person who has the idea and is looking for like-minded individuals to join the group. That's exactly how this started. And this one like-minded individual was Dr. Caroline Shanae Hussein, who brought us all together. So like attracts like. So she found other people who were interested in researching and sharing and advocating for other people who are also in Roscas. And like attracts like, attracts like, and then we came to a group of 10. You mentioned trust. So in a Rosca, trust is key. You are pooling resources, you're mingling your finances. Everyone is taking turns putting in a pre-selected amount of money. Trust is paramount. Roscas don't work without trust. So you develop a trust, you develop relationship, and that is how you have your support system. I think of women who have to choose between daycare and going to work, or choose between going to work and elder care, supporting their parents or an older family member. I think of parents who, for either because of low wages or because of a lack of financial literacy, have to choose between sending their child to post-secondary education or an extracurricular sport, or learning to play an instrument, and picking extra shifts up or working another job. If we were able to support the financial system and gave everybody a fighting chance, people wouldn't have to choose. Nobody should choose between going to work and having someone take care of their child or take care of their mother. But like Rain said, it's usually women. We are the ones in the care economy primarily, and the ones who have to choose. Our labor isn't as compensated as it should be. It's not necessarily as appreciated as it should be, and it is a disservice to the entire world when women are not being treated equally and given the same opportunities that we deserve to be when it comes to being financially compensated.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm getting a sense that where are we time wise? Do we want to field some questions from our audience?
Yes.
Carmen, have you got some questions you want to share with us that from our audience?
Seeing a lot of comments. I don't know if I see any questions, and I apologize if anyone dropped a question in here. If they could maybe bump it up. I know. Let's see. Who Elnora has some ideas. Elnora Phillips, a system of local lodges run by mothers who pay a very low yearly membership fee for mutual benefit. And she also suggested a fund that would supply down payments for homes, giving credit for each year of childcare provided for one's own children.
That's a great idea. I like that. So what needs to happen to have some of these policies be changed? Is that something that your, for instance, Jackie, your students, are they interested in knowing how change can be brought about?
I like to hope so, yes. I do work with a disproportionately men, like at a disproportionately men-dominated university. Nevertheless, I think, Rhiannon, you brought this up, like what we measure is what we value. So starting to measure and account for women's work and unpaid work is really an important step in making it more visible. And there's a lot of accounting projects, satellite accounts that attempt to do that. So just events like this where we talk about it and acknowledge it is a really important first step, I think. And there is momentum for this, I think, in the US, at least at the national level, some momentum. Like we talked about, like a caring infrastructure, right? So there, that at least is now being talked about, if not actually enacted quite yet.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think that we see, as I said, and as you just mentioned, Jackie, and as all of you mentioned, lots of trends towards actually changing the system of values. I mean, that's really what we're talking about, isn't it? But structurally, both capitalism and socialism leave out the three life-sustaining non-monetized sectors of the economy: the household economy, the volunteer community economy, and the natural economy. And so that we have metrics which are lunatic, like GDP. A tree isn't in there until it's dead, until it's a log, even though we depend on trees for oxygen, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So it is really a crazy system. And what we really need is a partnerism movement, which is what I call for in the Real Wealth of Nations, because otherwise we're just trying to survive rather than creating a system that where the goal is caring for people starting at birth and caring for our natural life support systems. And we have it, these definitions of economics are purely based on domination economics, like scarce resources to meet unlimited needs. I mean, come on. I mean, that's nuts. That's a crazy way of putting it, because we're destroying so many resources. We're misdistributing, and overpopulation is purely a devaluation of women, except as mothers of sons for men. You know, I mean, and I mean, the whole thing is interconnected. So I'm going to have to leave because I didn't know that this was going to go until now. But it's so fascinating. And I love the work that you're doing, all three, Andrea and Shanda and Jackie. And I see what you're doing as part of the partnership movement, the partnerism movement, because as long as we keep fighting each other, and that's one way that the system, so well has us under it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just fight each other. And that's not the way we're going to really achieve our goals. Not to win. It's all about who wins and who loses, but to create something that sustains us, that nurtures our humanity. Okay. And with
Yeah.
that, I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to go. And
All
I
right.
thank you so much, all of you.
Thank
And
you. Thank you,
onward.
Rianne. All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rianne.
Yeah. So, uh, um, so I want to just ask you all, where do you get your strength from? Where do you, I mean, you have bad days. I mean, you're here to inspire us. You have good suggestions and ideas, but you have bad days. So where do you get your strength? What do you look to bring you strength?
I'll go first. Well, that is a great question, Ricky. So personally, I do have a higher power. I do tap into that, and I also do have inner strength. But the same coaching methods that I give to others, I practice myself.
Uh-huh.
So, speaking positively to myself, even on those days where, in Vermont, we don't have a lot of sunny days, we have a lot of rain. We had a lot of downtime with the flood and everything, and that was really traumatic.
It was.
Just when you see, like, it hit me, not physically, but emotionally and mentally, because I saw the suffering of others
Yeah.
around me. Bright sunny day, all of a sudden, boom, everything that you've ever thought you had is gone in a flash.
Yeah.
And so I had delayed PTSD when it came to that.
Mhm.
But just what really gave me hope was that I was able to tap into a very loving community
Uh,
that came together just out of nowhere. And it's actually making me feel a little emotional now,
uh,
because I just couldn't believe, like, out of nowhere, we had nothing, but we managed to just pull together the little that we had to share with the community, which was so beautiful. That
mhm.
the human spirit still, it still triumphs in the time of disaster, and it's, that's humanity at its finest, right?
Right. Yes.
So, I tap into my higher power, I tap into me. And at times that it's really, really low, I feel blessed to say that I do have a very loving community surrounding me.
Great. Jackie, where do you get your strength on down days?
I'm going to echo Shonda and say it's also my community. When I think professionally, like my academic community of feminist economists has been incredibly supportive, and the reason why I've stayed in this field and been able to have a job like this. So having that support. And Ricky, when we met and got to talk about an economy of our own, or conversations like this, it just feels really wonderful. I get a lot of support and strength from my students as well, and just seeing like the amazing things they're capable of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Me too. Andrea, where do you find your strength on? But you never have bad days, do you?
Ricky, we all have bad days. I try not to have very many of them. But there's a common theme here. It comes from our community and the relationships with people we know, and sometimes strangers. It is so nice and gratifying after a workshop or a presentation when someone, pulls you aside and says, thank you for sharing that. When I was a little girl, I saw my grandma do this. She raised enough money to send my mom to school in another country. That's why our life is the way it is now. Or to hear someone say, oh, I practice what you were talking about, and I was able to buy my first car debt-free, interest-free. What you're saying works. I believe it. This is what I do. So having people fill you up and reinforce and validate what you're saying or sharing with everyone just makes you feel good. And I keep those little warm moments when I'm not feeling, when you're not feeling as great as you normally would. You just think back to what you're doing is important because you remember these little heartwarming stories.
I'm kidding. Yes.
And of course,
yes.
affirmations, like Shonda said, always saying positive, wonderful, self-affirming things about yourself.
Hmm.
And Ricky, I think this might actually be a perfect lead into a question that Paula Rochelle put in the chat, which is, she wrote, I have been lucky financially. My friend has not. Suggestions, please, on how to start a group of friends to support this person on the edge of homelessness while still respecting the person who feels shame around her own financial situation. So how do your communities support you, and how can we support one another in a powerful way?
Well, I know here in Vermont, we have a lot of the church faith-based organizations that people can tap into as a resource. And we also have community partnerships. We have an agency called the Capstone Community Action, and they have different centers throughout the state that actually offer free services, financial coaching. And a lot of times people feel like they have to reach down in their own resources to lift up their friends, but sometimes that turns into enabling. So what I usually do is kind of direct people to go to these agencies where the resources are free, and it's also beneficial because you get an outside perspective rather than having someone who may be too close to home, where there might be a shame factor in their finances. So it takes the personalization out of that, and it gets them in touch just with someone who is unbiased. And I think that's a lot healthier for people, like if you have a friend who's struggling, removing yourself and then helping them to pivot towards somebody who can be more unbiased towards their situation.
That's interesting, Shonda. But that doesn't mean that this friend can't be supportive and lend a listening ear and be there for that person, and give them some of that positive encouragement that you all have said has been important to you. Yes?
Well,
Yeah.
I definitely think that your friends should be positive,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't want your friends. It can be a fine line between judging your friends, right? When
Yeah.
it's like too close.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I recommend that people kind of get an outside third party to come in and to really help your friend. And do you listen to your friends? Do we always listen to our friends? No, we don't.
Sometimes.
Well, I would say most times your friends, they mean well, but we don't often take their advice.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's great
putting it
advice.
back out
Well,
there, yeah.
Real quick, one of the things, as I'm a former advocate for domestic and sexual violence survivors and victims, and one of the first things in training that you learn when you're working with a survivor is to listen and to believe.
Mhm.
That's right off the bat. If you don't do that, you're never going to be able to support, to understand, or to have them believe that you are really there to help. So listen and believe.
That's a
Well,
great.
yeah, and then be able to advise them of a third party that might be able to help them. That's what I heard Shonda say too.
Mhm.
So Carmen, I think we're probably running out of time, and have we answered all the questions we had in front of us? Are there any things that we haven't talked about that you three would like to mention before we
Yeah. Bartering. So I saw a comment about bartering. And so I've personally recently started bartering myself within the small business community. And the one thing that I do love about being part of a rural community here in Vermont is that people are very creative financially. So you might, trade. I recently did a favor for someone, a total stranger. We bartered online. I watched her cat for a couple days, and she gave me her CSA farm share. So that was pretty creative. And I've also done other things like house sit for a couple days, and I'll give you a massage. I was like, oh, that's nice. So, being creative, and who knows, the system may collapse anytime now with the wars that we're funding. So getting back to creative finance and bartering is definitely really a joy for me. I'm loving it. So I think
I
that's
love that you said that.
Try to get into it. Yeah.
I love that. It's about what has value. So when you pull out a purple, green, or blue bill, here in Canada, our bills are colorful. I think all of your bills are green. When you pull out one of these colorful bills out of your wallet, that is one way to exchange value. But baking somebody their favorite, red velvet cake, or knitting someone a pair of socks, or, I'll mow your lawn, will you come and do my laundry? That sort of thing. It is what is of value to you. It's an economy. It's what is of value to you. It is not always, currency. What is currency?
Right. Great point.
Well, it's been wonderful, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. I don't know. Those of you in the audience, are you sorry to see this end? I am. We can keep on talking. Have you learned anything or taken away any hints from our panel, and also from the chat? People have been contributing to the chat right along, and there's lots of goodies in there too, and you'll all get a copy of that. I surely have. So Carmen, would you show that that next slide? Yeah, we thank you so much, Brianne and Andrea and Jackie and Shonda. We're really grateful to you. We're grateful to our next slide. Oh, yes. We have been thinking so much about changing the system. And we've been talking about trauma just now. But we're wondering, okay, so when we begin to be creative and begin to talk positively and begin to figure out ways to set aside money the way our parents or our grandparents did, how can we make sure that what we use that money for is really reflecting our values, right? So we're going to have a follow-up conversation with some more great women talking about women investing for change and feministing finance for people and planet. And Janine Fermo from Invest for Better, Women Lead the Way, is going to be with us. Vanessa Lowe, who is Philadelphia's favorite financial educator. She's got a radio show, Vanessa's Money Hour, and she's taught all kinds of classes and been involved in community development. And we have some word out to a couple of other women too, but please put this in your calendar, December 4th, 7:30 p.m. For more great learning, more great conversations on another economic topic. Next one, please. We thank our audience for joining us today. We are lifting up every woman's expertise in economics. You may think you don't know much about economics, but if you made it to our show tonight, you know more than you think you do, and we appreciate all the many ways that the economy works, not just with money, but with our lives and our values. Next one. Our continual question in these conversations, and they're all up on our website and on our YouTube channel, if you're interested in seeing other economic topics. Our ongoing question is, how do we transform this economy that is now waged as war, seeking that domination all the time, into an economy waging life? I think that's an interesting question because of that word waging. We wage war. We pay for war big time. But how can we begin to wage life? And so we've heard some great ideas tonight, and you'll see them in other videos that we have up on our website from other conversations. And next one, next slide. Yes. Well, we want to say that in women we trust, and in those men who love us. You know, Virginia Woolf did say that women need two things. They need an income and a room of their own, but we know that we need an economy of our own, and we need to do that together. And there's lots of ways for us to stay connected. I guess this is an animated slide, Carmen. Can you hit the next button? Maybe it isn't. Oh, there we go. Wow, she hit all of the buttons. All right, you can explore our webpage Zooms. I've already talked about that. They always come with a document for additional learning, which everyone who came to this also got that document, and you can see those on our social media at Economy of Our Own, and our blog at Medium. And you can subscribe to our newsletter. In fact, I'm going to put all of you on our newsletter. It's easy to unsubscribe, but I want you to stay in touch with us. You can invest in women through our giving circle. I'm grateful to those women who and men who made this tonight's event possible. And you can take our Learning Circle survey. Learning Circles go a little bit deeper than these short conversations, and we're working on funding those in future, and need to know, what do you want to learn? Send us your ideas and suggestions, will you? So I think that's it for everyone, people. Good night. A big thank you to our great Economy of Our Own team, Carmen Rios, our Zoom maestro, and Mary Beth Gardam, who is our timekeeper, Katanya Hart and Georgia Kelly, who are also on our steering committee, and Stephen MacArthur, who helped with the chat. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Let's keep in touch and keep on putting our heads together. We can transform this system. Yes, let's do it. Bye now. Good night.